After my divorce, I found out I was pregnant when my ex-husband came to our company as the client to discuss a collaboration. I accidentally started throwing up. He glanced at me and then increased the project funding for our company by $1 billion. Our boss was grinning from ear to ear and eagerly asked, "Florian, is there some good news today?" My ex smiled. "My wife is throwing up. Looks like I'm going to be a dad." I was left dumbfounded. It had been less than 2 months since I divorced Florian, and now he had become my client. At that moment, he was sitting in the conference room, legs crossed, casually tapping his long fingers on the table while listening to me speak. "Florian, what do you think of this proposal?" I gritted my teeth, repeatedly reminding myself that he was my client now, forcing out a smile that was uglier than crying. "This 12th version of the proposal, are you still not satisfied?" As soon as I finished speaking, I caught a glare from my boss, who had warned me before the meeting to control my temper. After all, Florian was the most generous client we had. "Florian, what do you think? If you're not satisfied, I can have them make more revisions." Revisions. My foot. I silently cursed my sycophantic boss 100 times in my head. "The proposal, well," Florian deliberately stretched his words, making everyone in the room tense up. He lowered his gaze, his long eyelashes casting shadows as they fluttered. He chuckled lightly, and the little mole under his right eye seemed to dance with his laughter. "I don't think it's very good." "Damn it, I knew it." "Well, it's not entirely your fault. I just went through a divorce, and I'm not in a good mood. I find it hard to be interested in anything. How about we discuss this collaboration another time?" My boss was suddenly panicked. "What are you saying?" "We'll keep revising the proposal until you're satisfied." "It doesn't matter. Florian, you're too good to have trouble finding someone better." Florian remained silent, his gaze returning to me. "I'm turning 30, and I won't find anyone better." I nearly ground my teeth to dust. This guy was so petty. Wasn't it just that I casually mentioned during our divorce that you're 30, you're not as capable as when you were 25? He was so furious, he shattered the cup in his hand. "Men are in their prime at 31. Florian, don't underestimate yourself. What kind of woman do you like? I can keep an eye out for you. How about you let me know how to revise this proposal?" "Monica, get a notebook and write it down fast." I silently dug out my notebook, ready to note down the requirements for the 13th version of the proposal. "How about I talk to Monica separately?" Florian suggested, and my boss dared not disagree, quickly gathering his things and leaving the room. Suddenly, it was just the two of us in the office. "Let's discuss my requirements. First, the cover must be colorful white. Secondly, I want the proposal to be concise but meaningful, noble yet approachable." Florian rambled on, while my fists clenched. "Does he even hear himself? Do you understand?" He leaned his head on his hand, looking quite pleased. "Back when we divorced, I had asked Florian to go to the civil affairs office with me, but he refused. You want me to divorce you? You'll have to beg me." I was so angry, I threw a pillow at him. "Beg you? In your dreams?" But reality hit hard. Now, he was my client, and I reluctantly found myself saying, "I'm begging you. Can you talk normally?" "I didn't hear you. Speak up." Florian immediately leaned in closer. I took a deep breath, feeling my stomach churn violently. "Say it. I'm listening." "If you..." Before he could finish, nausea surged up, and I dashed out of the conference room. I threw up in the women's restroom until there was nothing left but bile. Florian's voice echoed from outside. "Are you okay?" Then I heard a flurry of footsteps, and my assistant Trisha was the first to rush in. "What's wrong? Did you eat something bad?" I shook my head and stepped out of the restroom, only to find a crowd staring at me. That day's meeting had to be called off. The next day, Florian returned. Our boss made a special effort to send someone out for coffee, fruit, and even lit some incense in the conference room to welcome the esteemed guest. But as soon as I walked into the meeting room and caught a whiff of the scent, I had to dash to the bathroom to vomit again. When I emerged, I overheard some whispers. "Why is Monica throwing up like that? She didn't eat anything this morning. Could it be that she's pregnant?" I paused at that comment. Florian, who had come along, met my gaze, causing me to break into a cold sweat. For years during our marriage, I had taken precautions, but the night before we divorced, Florian had suddenly knocked on my door. "There won't be a man like me who's this considerate again. It's your last chance. Why not use this benefit of being Mrs. Needham?" Because it was the last night, I had lost myself in the moment. I couldn't recall if we had used precautions or not. No way. I took a deep breath, only to hear Florian laughing uncontrollably. He quickly covered his mouth, but the amusement in his eyes was unmistakable. Seeing him so happy, my boss joined in. "Florian, is something good happening?" "Oh, nothing much. It's just that I might be becoming a dad." I thought about it. Yesterday's proposal is fine. I'll increase the funding by another $1 billion. You guys just need to do a good job. Now my boss was even more thrilled. Everyone in the company was caught up in the joy, but human feelings are not mutually comprehensible. I pressed my hand to my stomach, still in shock. Florin wanted to finalize collaboration details with me, but he didn't like the incense in the conference room and suggested we go outside to eat while discussing. My boss immediately transferred $20,000 to me, wanting me to take good care of this big client. But once I got downstairs, I saw Florin looking at the navigation, preparing to set out. Destination Civil Affairs Office. Total distance. Estimate needed. What are you doing? Planning to remarry, unless you want the child to grow up without a dad. He locked eyes with me, trying to impose a moral obligation. Unfortunately, I had no morality. First, we need to confirm its existence. Even if it is real, it doesn't have human rights, yet whether it lives or dies is up to me, and I can easily get it another dad. The instant I mentioned changing the dad, Florin's face went cold. That's impossible. I don't agree. Your disagreement doesn't matter. I headed directly to his car, opened the passenger door, and got in. Why aren't you driving yet? No matter what, we needed to confirm its existence first. Why didn't we use protection that night? I glared at him, hoping for a satisfying answer. Florin fastened his seatbelt and casually responded, otherwise, how would there be a chance of remarrying? I was stunned, replaying the events of that night in my mind, only to realize I had been played. After announcing our divorce, Florin and I had lived in separate rooms. On the last night, he had knocked after coming out of the shower, looking irresistible in a bathrobe. He had droplets of water glistening on his skin, and I couldn't help but swallow hard as my gaze fell upon the shadows of his abs beneath the robe. Last chance. Why don't we indulge a little? There won't be another opportunity after this. You won't find a man as good as me easily. His words echoed in my ears, like a snake enticing Adam to bite the apple. In the end, I couldn't resist. I didn't expect to be trapped by Florin this way. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I threw a punch at him, and he didn't dodge, letting me hit him. Only after I vented my frustrations did he finally speak up. Why don't we remarry and keep this child? Don't even think about it. Don't forget, our marriage was fake. At that time, I needed a marriage partner, because if I didn't get married, my mom would keep worrying about my marital status. It wasn't for my happiness. She simply wanted a higher dowry. When she discussed my future husband with matchmakers, she advertised me like a product. My daughter graduated from college. What does that matter? Smart. She can tutor the kids in the future. I raise her well. I won't even let her do housework. When she has her period guarantee and there's no cold uterus issue. Once she's married, she can have babies. What kind of man do you want? Just anyone who can pay a dowry. Well, Demi Robbie needs money for his business. Florin and I met in college. He was a year older than me and conducted my interview. When I joined the student council, he couldn't stop smiling when he saw the information I filled out. What kind of a silly name is this? Because I used to be called Paige, everyone fell silent. I had changed my name after entering college. The reason was simple. I won first place in a math Olympiad. And when the TV station came to interview my family, they felt my name sounded ugly. A neighbor suggested that my mom change it, or it would look bad in the newspaper. At first, my mom didn't agree, arguing it was that name that gave her my brother. In the end, it took a series of persuasions from the army for her to finally let me change my name. Since she thought names had such power, I figured I'd just change it myself, using magic to counter magic. Florin was one of the few who understood my family's situation. In fact, he was in a similar situation, had an older brother, and his parents favored him. Florin had always been opaque, feeling unseen within the family. From middle school on, he had been living independently. We found a sense of camaraderie in each other's struggles. I didn't want my mom pressuring me to marry, so I decided to marry someone myself. Florin came from a wealthy family, but my mom never had a mind for him. Back when we got married, I told her Florin wasn't loved by his parents and had debt to his name. Florin was so busy with his startup that every penny had to be stretched. At first, my mom didn't believe it, but when she realized we hadn't even had a wedding and were practically living on the floor in the office, she panicked. I'm worried that if I ask to borrow money, she'll delete me from Wegget and put my number on her blacklist. Now, it's been 5 years since we last contacted each other. I felt a sense of relief, and once I was sure my mom could never find me again, I filed for divorce this year. Florin came with me to the hospital for a checkup and confirmed that I was pregnant. After leaving the hospital, I kicked him in anger. I just planned my promotion path, and now you've interrupted it. Recently, there's been an opening for a vice president position at work, and I've been eyeing it for a long time. I've been spending time with clients and working late on proposals. It was all going well until now everything's ruined. The next day, when I got to the office, everyone gathered around me with concern. Monica, How are you, Monica? If you're feeling unwell, please let us know. A crowd surrounded me, and I finally managed to shove through them to my desk. Why are you all crowding around me? I just ate something bad. But Andrea said you're pregnant. Everyone exchanged glances, and my gaze landed on Andrea. When she met my eyes, she remained calm and kept her smile. Monica, we're all colleagues here. If you're having difficulties, just speak up. There's no need to hide anything. If you find the workload too much, maybe consider handing some off to Laura. Andrea, the vice president, transferred from the headquarters, is eyeing a vacant VP position and wants to give it to her chosen employee, Laura. It seemed like she was offering help, but it was a thinly veiled attempt to undermine me. No thanks. I just had an upset stomach. Andrea, please don't spread rumors. My lawyer isn't someone to mess with. As soon as I finished speaking, Laura stood right in front of Andrea. Monica, what are you talking about? Who doesn't know that Andrea isn't involved in office politics? She only does her job, right? Everyone knows that our VP, Andrea, is an angel who cares for everyone and nurtures our work family. That's because she has someone like Laura to be her shield. Laura, oblivious to this, thinks Andrea is promoting her. I didn't want to get dragged into this nonsense, so I turned and grabbed my files to report my work. My boss was thrilled with the collaboration with Florin, complimenting me continuously, but just as I was about to leave, he stopped me. Are you pregnant? Did Andrea say something? My boss awkwardly rubbed his nose. She said she didn't want you to struggle with work if you were pregnant, so she reminded me to pay more attention to employee care. What if you are? I'm not pregnant. I cut him off directly. After all, I plan to terminate this pregnancy, so whether I admit it now or not doesn't matter. That evening after work, I got a call from Florin, saying he'd come to pick me up at the office now that I'm divorced. He's suddenly being nice. I chuckled and took my time before going downstairs. Florin's car was parked outside, but someone got to him before I did. Florin, are you here because you're unhappy with the collaboration? No, I'm here to find someone. Who do you need? If there's anything I can assist with, just let me know. Monica's young, and it's natural for her to miss some details. Maybe I can help after all. We're practically alumni. I stood nearby, listening to Andrea chat with Florin. When Andrea first joined the company, the boss did mention we went to the same university. After that, she never brought it up again, and I'd almost forgotten about it. Looking back, I really miss the cafeteria food from school. Where did you like to eat? Florin, one hand in his pocket, Florin's other hand clenched into a fist. Each time he was annoyed but held back, he made that gesture. I was surprised you picked Monica to handle the proposal. After all, gee, forget you shouldn't say anything bad about my colleague. How about we find somewhere to eat? All classmates catching up. Andrea, well, it's true we went to the same school. We never spoke a word to each other when we were there. Andrea stood there awkwardly, looking lost, her big innocent eyes staring at Florin. After all these years, the only thing I miss about school is the cafeteria. That just tells you what you cared about in school. So don't ask me why I picked Monica for this. That's the reason. I have my doubts about your work capabilities. You're still just a VP after all this time. Florin hit the nail on the head, leaving Andrea stunned. Apparently, she didn't understand him well enough. She was unprepared. Florin was on the debate team in college. His mouth could leave anyone speechless. I always tried to avoid a direct confrontation with him. After Andrea stormed off in anger, I showed up, and Florin just glanced at me before opening the car door for me. Your colleague is really strange. You're no different. Why are you here? It's not like someone would just randomly pick up their ex-wife after work. I did a lot of research last night and found a great hospital. We should get a thorough checkup, and then we need to. I'm not going to have this baby. He paused and frowned at me. After a long, tense silence, his eyes turned pleading. Is it that you don't want a baby or just don't want mine? Or do you think I'm trying to manipulate you? If that's the case, I apologize. I stayed silent. I had already made up my mind. After I wrapped up my current projects, I'd take a leave of absence and terminate the pregnancy. Here we go again. Every time I want to talk through something with you, you go silent. Is that how you want to solve things? Can you quit with the cold treatment? As he spoke, Florin grabbed my hand and pressed it against his face. Why don't you slap me a couple of times to vent? I tried to pull away, but he held on tight. Florin, I'm starting to not understand you. I only briefly dated Florin for 2 months before my mom started pressuring me to get married. I should say, she was eager to use me to get money, so I told Florin that I wanted to get married. Most people wouldn't agree to a flash marriage just after 2 months, but Florin thought for a moment and then said, sure, what are we going to do about the wedding? I was ready for him to refuse and was caught off guard by this question. I didn't answer, and he started talking to himself. Let me check the dates and see when's good for registration. How many tables should we have for the banquet? It's just a fake marriage. No need to make it so complicated. Smart as he is, Florin quickly figured out that it was my mom's idea. We just got our marriage certificate, informed family and friends, and didn't do anything else. He was busy starting his own business, while I was focused on work. But I couldn't deny that once we had that marriage certificate, I found a sense of camaraderie with Florin, a shared goal to strive for. Until one night, 2 months after we got married, we both had a few drinks, and he suddenly intertwined his fingers with mine. Since we're married, why don't we make it real? So our sham marriage turned into a real relationship, lasting until 3 months ago. I filed for divorce, and Florin disappeared for 2 days. On the 3rd day, he came back and agreed to the divorce. To this day, I still can't figure him out. Are you really doing all this just to win me back? If so, why didn't you just refuse to divorce in the first place? What if I had? Would you have dropped the idea? Not a chance. Once I set my mind to something, nothing could change it. See, if your thoughts could be changed so easily, I'd throw a fit to convince you to take it back. But instead, when I do this, you end up hating me more. He held his hands up in a defeated gesture, giving me a look of frustration. I could only feel the throbbing in my temples. Then, what do you think you're doing now? I'm trying to win you back. Saying that, Florin swung open the back door of the car, revealing a huge bouquet of fresh flowers. He raised an eyebrow, looking gleeful. What do you think? Do you like them? I'll bring you flowers every day until I win you back. I tried to wrap my head around Florin's thought process, but I failed miserably and could only murmur, "You're insane," before bolting. Yet Florin didn't seem to be joking about wanting to win me back. The next day, he showed up again at my building. A free ride is a free ride. Florin drove me to work, and we ran into Andrea on the way down. She watched me get out of Florin's car, and her usually warm eyes flickered with a hint of darkness. We took the elevator together, and just as I was about to pull out my phone to check my schedule, Andrea's voice cut in next to me. "Monica, as your senior, I just want to give you a little advice. Don't rush things, it'll only backfire." I waited for her to continue. Andrea used a lecturing tone. "Always looking to take shortcuts won't lead to good outcomes. What you're doing could harm the company's reputation." She didn't know about my relationship with Florin. She probably thought I was trying to climb the ladder by flirting for a deal. "Thanks for the advice, Andrea. But before that, could you take a look at this quarter's sales numbers? Your contribution is 0. Being nonchalant won't earn you revenue." I stepped out of the elevator first, catching the reflection in the glass showing Andrea pouting behind me, looking like the innocent victim I bullied. Sure enough, the next second, Laura appeared in front of me. "Monica, are you bullying Andrea again?" I sometimes admire Laura's almost pathological loyalty to Andrea. It's because of people like Laura being willing to be used as a sword that Andrea can maintain her image as a gentle and caring colleague. "Why do you always have to clash with Andrea? She's such a kind person," Laura said. I sighed and handed Laura a tissue from my pocket. "Wipe your eyes. Don't let someone use you." Andrea appeared taken aback. "You can't say that. I have no way to defend myself." "Then just be quiet." I tossed that line back at her and walked into the office, ignoring Laura behind me stomping her feet in anger. Before long, rumors began to spread around the company that I had climbed the corporate ladder solely because of my looks. One of our previously agreed partnerships fell through due to these whispers, as the partner's wife refused to let them work with me. After much discussion, my boss managed to salvage the deal, but it was handed over to Laura. Later, my boss called me into his office. "Monica, I know you must feel wronged, but the company has to think of the bigger picture. We build our reputation over the years to earn our clients' trust, right?" He said this while studying my reaction. "Why don't you take some time off for now while I sort this out?" I put my cup down on the table, the sound cutting him off. "So now you want to throw me under the bus?" I single-handedly boosted last quarter's performance, and now, because of some gossip, you want to abandon me. That's not what I mean at all. It's just that there's a lot of noise coming from outside about you. How about you let Laura take the vice president position for now? Once this blows over, I'll promote you. A clever tactic of retreating to advance. I chuckled softly, fiddling with my watch and saying nothing. Seeing my silence, my boss hurried to reassure me. "I know you're upset. In my eyes, you're already the VP. I'll even give you a little extra bonus this month. How does that sound?" "Boss, if I remember correctly, position changes are usually decided at the end of the month. Before that, I'll resolve this matter. And since Laura is so eager to take on my project, she can have it all. No one could take what was mine." I walked out of the office and bumped into Laura, who looked smug. I willingly let her have the project, and found myself with a rare bit of free time. When I occasionally ran into Andrea in the break room, I finally had time to chat with her. "You're still young, so it's natural to take the wrong path. I hope this incident teaches you a lesson." I went through all the sad things in my life but managed to hold back my laughter. Just then, Laura walked into the break room. I gently patted her on the shoulder. Here's something for you. Take it well. If you want to wear the crown, you must bear the weight. Laura ignored my comment, determined to push through with the project. But her happiness didn't last long. The project started encountering one problem after another because Laura was unclear about the specific processes. Calls from our partners came directly to me, asking me to come back and fix things. Every day, Laura was busy berating her subordinates and assistants, and the meeting room was occupied indefinitely. I sat her day in my office, goofing off while answering calls from previous partners. Your boss said you're taking time off lately. When will you be back? Laura's mental state doesn't seem right. The project terms are always mismatched. At this rate, we won't be able to continue our partnership. Looking through the glass into the meeting room, where Laura was yelling at her subordinates, I sighed and said, there's been a small issue internally with the company. I'm currently sidelined. But don't worry, I'll discuss this with management. Regardless of the outcome, I'll make sure to complete your project. After hanging up, I stood up and walked to the office door, smiling at Laura through the glass. She glared at me, gritting her teeth. Did she really think she could just spread rumors about me and sabotage my project to win? I still had plenty of projects to handle. Laura tried to fix things, but eventually, there was another setback. A shipment got stuck at customs, and due to the lack of contingency plans, our partner was furious and called my boss. He quickly summoned us to his office. Why weren't there any backup plans for such a major issue? Laura, what on earth are you doing? Several partners have come to see me today. Laura was crying, her eyes red, while I casually sipped my coffee from the sofa beside her. Monica, why don't you handle this? As my boss turned to me, I quickly shook my head. The project isn't my responsibility right now, and given my current image, it wouldn't be convenient for me to get involved. I had no intention of making someone else's stress. These projects are fundamentally yours. You should finish them, and the credit should also be yours. I've recently received several calls from partners, all expressing their trust in you. Those rumors are pure nonsense. Ali issued a statement this afternoon, telling everyone to stop spreading rumors. I remained silent, and my boss grew impatient. After a long standoff, he called in HR, sent out a notice appointing Monica as vice president. Why should she get that? Laura exclaimed, her eyes wide as she looked up, but my boss shot her a glare. Monica has the best performance in the company. The vice president position is rightfully hers. After saying this, he turned back to me with a smile. Please go handle the project's wrap-up. Just let me know who you need help from. All right, everyone, you can disperse. Not so fast. I stopped a few people attempting to leave and walked over to Laura, then slapped her hard across the face. Laura screamed and covered her face, and I felt a rush of satisfaction. Andrea had already distanced herself at the onset. That's what you get for slandering me. If you spread rumors again, my lawyer will be in touch. Then, I pulled out a recording containing Laura's voice. Willie might not be aware of who Monica really is. She's relying on her youth to take shortcuts. Are you truly comfortable handing this collaboration to someone like her? Laura's eyes widened as she stared at the recorder in my hand. Speechless. Sorry, but Willie is my longtime client. I recorded your little speech the moment you started bad-mouthing me. I handed the recording to my boss. I can handle competition, but this kind of vile tactic to undermine a colleague won't bring any benefits to the company. It only led to this kind of disaster. My boss was furious, chastising Laura for her incompetence and her underhanded methods. With red eyes filled with tears, Laura finally noticed Andrea hadn't said a word the whole time. Andrea, say something. Didn't I follow your instructions? Weren't you the one who told me to smear Monica's reputation? At this, Andrea lightly pushed Laura away. I might help you plead your case, but saying this forces me into a position I don't want to be in. When did I ever instruct you to do such things? What's in it for me? But didn't you say Monica is younger than you? One day she'll be on equal footing as you. You're not jealous. Enough. Why must you keep slandering me? Andrea snapped, clearly annoyed. I stood by and watched them throw accusations at each other. My boss was furious and scolded both of them. As they left, Laura ran away crying, covering her face. Andrea followed me closely, her eyes blazing with anger. So this is your game. You purposely let her take the reins, waited for her to mess up, and now you're playing the Good Samaritan by cleaning up the mess. Facing her accusation, I merely chuckled. I'm just not as kind as you are. I don't want to warm the workplace. In this environment of survival of the fittest, I only enjoy the thrill of the fight. The personnel change was announced soon, and on my first day as VP, Laura was fired. As she left, she lashed out at Andrea, claiming she was seen merely as a tool stripped of her dignity. In the end, Andrea had to call security to escort her out, but everyone could hear the commotion clearly. The facade Andrea had maintained to gain favor with others vanished then and there, leaving her isolated. That night, as we met in the elevator, Andrea adopted a lecturing tone. Monica, Are you really happy with a position gained through such desperate measures? Salary increase, bonuses, stock options, plus an additional half-month of paid vacation. Wow, I am so happy. I enumerated each perk, watching as Andrea clenched her fists. If this makes you happy, then I have nothing more to say. Why? Because my happiness makes you jealous. Her fists tightened even more. Laura was still our colleague. Your junior. Pressuring her to leave using such vicious methods is something I can't condone. Is that so? Well, I enjoy seeing you not liking me, while being unable to do anything about it. Ultimately, Andrea couldn't compete and tried to act as if she didn't wish to avoid being wronged. She needed a pawn and yet insisted others shouldn't compete. That kind of logic is not something most people think of. Just call it crazy. Only someone like Laura would choose to believe it. When the elevator finally arrived at the ground floor, I walked out, with Andrea still on my heels, ranting. If everyone could coexist peacefully, why are you ruining the harmony? Andrea stopped talking, and I also halted my steps. Outside the building stood someone we both recognized. Florin. He was holding a large bouquet of pink roses, with long ribbons trailing on the ground. His already eye-catching appearance was even more appealing with the flowers. Not caring about anything else, I dragged Florin into the car. It was too embarrassing. It felt like seeing an acquaintance fart. What are you doing? You haven't even told me if you like the flowers yet. I shoved him into the car, urging him to drive quickly. Before the car moved off, I glanced back at Andrea. She was staring daggers at me, her hand clutching her flask tightly before smashing it on the ground. After we had driven quite a distance, I finally relaxed. What brings the flowers today? Weren't we supposed to avoid each other after the divorce? Today marks 100 days since our divorce. Isn't it a significant day that warrants a celebration? What's there to celebrate? We celebrated 100 days of marriage. Why not 100 days of divorce? Hearing Florin's casual tone made me feel exasperated. I had become so distracted by Andrea's craziness that I had forgotten Florin's own brand of insanity. He took me directly to a restaurant, obviously having planned this well. From the decor to the dishes served, everything was tailored to my taste. Yet, I had zero enthusiasm for it. Isn't it to your liking? Florin carefully watched my expression while we waited for our food, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. I knew he wasn't really a natural comedian. He probably found those online. I'm not planning on remarrying, so you don't need to waste your time on me, I said flatly. Florin lowered his head, stirring his sweet soup with a tiny spoon. Is it because you don't like me? No, that's not it. In fact, I really liked Florin. He probably knew me better than anyone else in the world. When we graduated, we went through some tough times together, even eating instant noodles in the office. Our lives only changed dramatically when his parents realized his potential and pushed him to take over the family business. But I've changed. I'm not myself anymore. It was like I woke up one day to the reality that every time I attended a gala with Florin, I was labeled as Mrs. Needham. I used to get special treatment because of him, but I was always kept away from the core projects. It felt like everyone thought I was just a pretty face. That's why I switched to a new company. But occasionally, partners still recognize me. If possible, I hope you can introduce me to Florin. They'd say no one cared if I completed my projects. They just wanted to meet him. It felt like I had become an accessory to Florin, much like I'd always looked down on people who leaned on others. My mom lived her whole life dependent on my dad, a sad and pitiful existence. When my dad got drunk, he'd hit her, complaining about her inability to give him a son after me. My mom had multiple pregnancies, but every time the doctor confirmed it was a girl, she lost the baby. Eventually, she had my brother, but my dad was still not satisfied, always nitpicking her flaws. She had no job, no friends, and no outlet for her frustrations. All her resentments were directed at me. At first, I thought it was all my dad's fault for turning her into that. But after he passed away, my mom remained the same, her mind forever shackled by him. As an accessory, she lost her thoughts long ago. I didn't want to end up like her. I'm doing really well now. I'm happy every day, I said, though there were moments when the pressure made me want to explode, but it was still better than feeling them every day. Florin, I love you, but I love myself even more. It took me 20 years to escape that dark home. I had to think of myself. After a long silence, Florin suddenly smiled, his expression brightening from a simple grin to one that made him laugh so hard he almost couldn't breathe. You scared me. I thought you didn't like me. Did you know that when you mentioned divorce, I cried for 2 days in a bar, like a dog? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Aren't we married? If you're worried, I have a great idea. With that, Florin pulled out a contract. From now on, you can support me. I stared at the contract, caught in the longest internal debate I'd ever had. It was a stock transfer agreement. Florin wanted to give me a huge portion of his shares. Once you get the shares and join the board, Are you confident you could take the chairman position in 3 years? Just please, don't forget me, your poor husband. When you do, are you serious? I flipped to the last page of the contract to find Florin's signature already there. Signing meant I could claim more than half of his wealth. I'm serious. I overlooked your feelings, and this is what you deserve. Florin took my hand. Who was there with me in the basement, starting up the business? I won't forget. I clenched the contract in confusion. Such wealth dropping into my lap was overwhelming. What do you say? If you agree, grab a piece of meat. If not, take some veggies, he said, handing me chopsticks while looking at the plates before me. Frustrated, I threw the chopsticks on the ground. Are you messing with me? There was steak and lobster on the table, and the only vegetable dish was already picked clean. I realized he was merely waiting for me. What does this mean? It's destiny, he replied humorously as he cut my steak. I imagined the steak was him and chewed it down furiously. I'm telling you, if you mess with me again. Before I could finish, Florin kissed me, silencing me. The stock changes couldn't be hidden from the board. Florin's parents quickly showed up, scolding him without hesitation. Are you crazy? We tolerated you marrying her, but what are you doing now? Handing over the family business to someone else. We're so disappointed in you. You're nothing like your brother. Facing their accusations, Florin just chuckled. I was about to enjoy the show when the last comment prompted me to look up. There's no comparison. Being a total incompetent like him is rare. This isn't your place to talk. Florin's mom tried to scold me, but I pulled out our house deed. This is my home. I'll sue you for trespassing. She and I had never gotten along, but I could handle her easily compared to Florin. After a few encounters with my fierceness, she wouldn't confront me directly and turned her ire back to Florin. What are you thinking, handing over the company to this woman? This is our life's work. And what has a lifetime of work yielded? AMS. Her words instantly silenced his parents. Florin's parents were willing to hand the company over only because it was on the brink of bankruptcy. They had already distanced themselves and set up a foundation for their eldest son to ensure his future was secure. Florin was the one who took on the burden and successfully navigated the company through crisis. Afterward, they wanted to reclaim their shares and secure a position for their older son, only to be turned down repeatedly. They exhausted their efforts, weakness, apologies, and insults, but Florin wouldn't budge and refused to let them interface any longer. Just when I thought they had given up, they showed up again. Why are you willing to give your shares to an outsider, but not to your parents or your only brother? Florin's mother screamed at him, but her words set him off. He stood up, furious. I'll tell you why. Because Monica is my favorite person. She's my wife. Without her, the company wouldn't have survived. She was with me through every meeting with investors while we were drowning in drinks. Where were you? From negotiations to project completion, she made sure everything was on point. Without her, there wouldn't be a company today. Why shouldn't she be on the board? Florin shouted at his parents. Do you remember my birthday? Do you remember what I love to eat? Do you even remember you have a son? You ignored me when it mattered, so why demand anything from me now? Without Monica, this company wouldn't be where it is today, and you're the least qualified people to comment on us. He kicked his parents out, telling them not to bother him anymore. The stock change went smoothly. Although the board of older men wasn't thrilled about my sudden appearance, it was okay. I thrive on challenges, and they could learn to break their routine of playing golf all day. But before that, I needed to address issues within the company. When Andrea learned about my relationship with Florin, she looked down on me. At the end of the day, you're just relying on a man to get ahead. Just then, Florin clasped my hand tightly, cutting her off. What are you talking about? You don't say that about my backer. As Andrea prepared to throw more shade, she suddenly received a call from her boss, informing her she was fired. Why? She quickly figured it out, her eyes narrowing like daggers towards me. Did you do this? Let's just say you brought this on yourself. Had she been willing to say a few words for Laura earlier, perhaps Laura wouldn't have chosen to bring everything crashing down, exposing Andrea's embezzlement. Unfortunately, she viewed Laura as merely a tool, never contemplating one day she might betray her. Andrea was expelled from the company and blacklisted in the industry. Her once lauded demeanor and effort to keep peace in the office didn't earn her a good word in the end. What lies ahead for her was no longer my concern. My future was bright with endless possibilities. Florin and I remarried, this time with a proper wedding, inviting many friends. During the evening party, someone asked Florin for his relationship tips. He spoke at length, completely unaware I was standing right behind him. Of course, I have plenty of secrets. For starters, a man must be handsome. Working out to maintain a good physique is key since a wife is proud of her husband's looks, right? Besides, if I have no outstanding talents, I need to rely on his face to win her over. And learn to cook or clean, be a true gentleman. When a friend spotted me, They immediately directed their question at Florin. Are you afraid of your wife? Ha! What are you talking about, a big man like me? I clenched my fists, curious about what he'd say next. How could I not be afraid of my wife? What if she leaves me? What if she stops loving me? My good character and looks would vanish in an instant. The most important thing is, Florin spun around and hugged me tightly. He had known all along. Amid the cheers of the crowd, he whispered in my ear, the most important thing is I love you, so I can't leave you. The story has come to an end. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for the latest content, with new novels being updated daily.